Hello language learners! As we know, there's no way to get better at speaking a foreign language than to speak it. I mean, like, it's literally impossible to get better at having a conversation in a foreign language without practicing having that conversation. I know, when I put it like that, it sounds dumb and obvious, but I find that a lot of language learners get really upset and overwhelmed and frustrated when they've been doing everything but speaking the language and then get mad that they can't speak the language. Of course, there are many ways to practice speaking a language. In this video, I want to compare two main general methods, and those are free language exchanges versus a paid tutor. They're very similar and very different, and I want to go into the aspects of both, and so you can make an educated decision about what might be better for your personality, lifestyle, goals, etc, etc, etc. In case you're not familiar with these two concepts, let me explain a little bit. Let's start with free language exchanges. Free language exchanges are generally when you meet up with somebody who speaks your target language that you're learning at a native level, at a very advanced level, or even at your level, depending on the dynamics. And they are learning the language that you speak natively, or again, a language that you speak fairly fluently. So for example, when I was in Spain, I would go to language exchanges all the time where I would meet up with a Spaniard who would help me practice speaking in Spanish. And then with that friend, I would help them speak in English. This is a pretty low-key way to get your spoken practice in with a friend. You know, just get some coffee, get a meal, split the time learning and practicing the different languages, etc, etc, etc. There are definitely ways to make the most of a language exchange and red flags to look out for, but that's a whole other subject. Nevertheless, language exchanges can be an excellent way to get your speaking practice in. A paid tutor, on the other hand, is somebody who you pay to tutor you in the language. Depending on what you're looking for and the teacher that you find, they might be a professional language tutor. If you're paying, they most likely are a professional language tutor, or they have a lot of experience in helping people learn to speak their language. But in those scenarios, you're paying somebody and you are just speaking the language that you are learning. There's no exchange of different languages. That's why it's called language exchange. There's no exchange of languages. It is just you practicing your target language with somebody who speaks that language natively, possibly professionally. So that's a bare bones difference. They're very similar, but also very different. I've participated in many language exchanges, in many paid tutor experiences. So in this video, I'm going to differentiate the two, go through some pros, go through some cons between them, so you can get a good understanding of what'll work for you. First one I'm going to talk about is free language exchanges. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with cons and then go to pros, you know, leaving on a happy note. And then I'm going to do the same with paid tutors. Free language exchanges. Conversations where you are meeting up with somebody totally casually and you are practicing your target language and then helping the other person, your language exchange partner, your conversation partner, with a language that you likely speak natively. My first major con of language exchanges is that finding a language exchange can be really overwhelming. This is my main issue with apps like HelloTalk, Tandem, Speaky. There's tons of these apps that are for free and they're very helpful. I personally get very overwhelmed with people trying to talk to me. If you get overwhelmed with this kind of thing, this is something to bear in mind that, you know, generally once you start an account somewhere on these apps, you're gonna get like a whole flood of people wanting to talk to you, and it can get really overwhelming. Just like me as an introvert, it can be a lot. Honestly, personally, that's like the biggest con that I have, which is why it's first. I have a really hard time with that. Second con, which is a con that everyone experiences at least once, I'm sure, is that people can be flaky, really flaky. I mean, I experience this with online language exchanges and in-person language exchanges all the time. Obviously, this depends on the person that you're talking to. Some people are obviously more flaky than others, but generally I found a lot of times that when I am trying to have like a casual language exchange, like once a week, once every other week, stuff like that, people get flaky and they either like forget or it's not a priority. I've had situations in which I had a language exchange partner that I would meet up with in person. We had planned a trip to go up to the mountains in Spain for like a month because, you know, we were in Madrid at the time and that's the only place where you were going to see snow. So I wanted to take a trip up to the mountain. And she decided at the last minute that she was going to have lunch with her dad. But regardless, that's a different story. People are flaky a lot of times, and you have to be prepared for that, especially if you're a flaky person, because I get flaky too. It really comes from me being afraid to speak in a foreign language and also being an introvert. That's something that I need to work on. Regardless, people get flaky when it's just like a casual, free hangout. And people are afraid to put themselves in that vulnerable position where they have to face the fact that they're not that great at speaking the language. That can be really scary, and people will flake out to avoid that. The third con, and this is specific to women or, you know, people who present as women or have more feminine names. Women have to keep their guard up. There are a lot of men who will use these language exchange apps and ways to connect with people as a way to find dates. And it gets bad. In my video where I was doing language exchanges over video chat, link below in the description, the last one I did, I got so catfished, it was crazy. It was somebody with a female picture and a female name, and it was not a female. And it was uncomfortable. People who present as more feminine or have more feminine names do have to be careful with free language exchanges because there are men out there who will just like hound. We have to keep our guard up, unfortunately. I just realized there's a lot of cons on this list. I might be pretty burned from free language exchanges. Maybe. Yikes. Next con, with free language exchanges. So the idea of a language exchange is that you're exchanging language, right? You have the language that you're learning and your native language or an advanced level language, which you're exchanging with somebody else who is learning that language. It can be hard to find a good ratio between those languages, especially if your conversational skills are higher or lower than your partner. It can be hard to either find that 50-50 ratio with somebody who wants to respect that you also need to, you know, practice your language and also wants to share 50% of that time. Or on the other hand, which is less bad, is that you end up spending the entire conversation speaking in your foreign language. I have done both. I have had both situations where we flipped half and half, like we spoke in Spanish for half an hour or we spoke in Spanish for like one topic. Any number of things that works for you and your partner. But if you're not feeling sure, if you're not feeling confident, if you find yourself comparing yourself to your language partner, don't do that. Bad language learner. It can be really hard to get that 50-50 ratio in, or a ratio that you're comfortable in. I've also had language exchanges where I ended up basically spending the whole time speaking in Spanish because my Spanish got really confident and my partner's English was not that great. Was great for me because I got in all that extra time, not great for her, and I don't think I ever saw her after that language exchange, actually. Oh, not my fault, honestly. You do have to put in the effort and the intention to find a good ratio and find a good split between the language that you're learning and the language that you speak with your partner. This can be really, really difficult. You'll have to find something that works for you, and that's a whole other part of free language exchanges, honestly. Finding somebody who will respect your time and somebody who, is reasonable and saying, hey, let's talk for half an hour, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Let's talk about this subject. Any number of things. It's a whole other part of language exchanges that you have to bear in mind and hope that you can find somebody who respects that you also need to practice your language. Finally, last con of language exchanges. I know this is a lot. I'm pretty sure I'm burned out by language exchanges, but that's just me. The last con for language exchanges is that you have to spend time in your native language or a language that you don't want to be practicing right now. Unless you find a partner who doesn't actually make the effort to speak your native language, which good for you, not great for them, and they're probably gonna flake out at the end of the day and they're just like, why am I here? I'm not practicing my language. This is a waste of my time. You're going to have to split your time. So if you're having like a Skype conversation with somebody for an hour, only half of that is for you. and your language. If you are using that whole time to build a relationship with that person, that's one thing, and that's totally valid. We love building relationships with people who speak our target language fluently. You are going to have to share that time and say, okay, some of this time is not for me, and you're gonna have to be okay with that. This can be a great break for you if you only want to speak for like 20 minutes and then you just want to like take a break and speak in your native language. It's all about what works for you and how you want to spend your time. Pros. Okay, language exchanges are not all bad, I promise. Just because I'm kind of worn out by them doesn't mean they're not good, and doesn't mean that they're not better for you than paid tutors, which I haven't even gone to yet, but I will get there. So, pros about free language exchanges. First of all, they're totally free, which means they are completely, totally accessible. There is monetary obstacle for you to get past. You don't have to save up to get language exchanges. There is no reason why you can't find a language exchange partner for yourself, no matter what your budget is, no matter how rich or poor you are. It's really the most accessible way to practice speaking the language. The next great thing about language exchanges is that you can meet people from all over the world and learn about their lives, learn about their cultures, learn about their perspectives. And that honestly is absolutely beautiful. And I love that. I love learning about different people, what their experience is, how they think, how they feel. And that's something that you can only really find in a language exchange. The way that people talk about their lives and stuff like that in a language that they don't feel confident in is a lot different than how they talk about their lives in their native language. You're gonna get much more education and connection and relationships with somebody who can talk about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, their experience and stuff like that. And honestly, it's one of the most beautiful aspects of learning another language. And finally, the third great thing about language exchanges, about free language exchanges, is that you can have spontaneous conversations. And this is great because it can remove huge barriers, both like imagined barriers and legitimate barriers with scheduling. You know, if you have like a kind of variable spontaneous schedule, or if you really want to schedule conversations when you're feeling motivated, inspired, energetic, you can do that with free language exchanges, because you can just pick up Langbee and just like literally have a conversation on the spot. I have 2 videos on Langbee, link below in the description, so if you want to check that out, it's really great for spontaneous conversations. So the spontaneity can not only help get rid of the obstacles of, you know, if you have a crazy schedule, but if you're experiencing anxieties and fears and you're really avoiding conversations, and, you know, scheduling a lesson with a paid tutor gives you a lot of anxiety when you're just like thinking about that conversation, just dreading it and dreading it and dreading it, and getting all in your head and freaking yourself out until you cancel last minute. Spontaneous conversations can get rid of that obstacle in your head. It can just like go away, you know? If you feel inspired in a moment, you can pick up your phone and have a conversation with somebody, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to psych yourself out about it. That can be a really great way to avoid that obstacle just 100%. So that's all about free language exchanges. Now let's talk about paid tutors. Very similar, but at the same time, in some ways, paid tutors are a completely different animal, so let's talk about it. The biggest con with a paid tutor is that it can get real pricey real quick. The cost of a paid tutor, it can vary a ton based on the language that you're learning, where your tutor is from, the service that you're using, what you're trying to learn, any number of things. So, you know, there's a difference between a paid tutor that'll charge you $5 an hour and one that'll charge you $35 an hour. And so if you're using a paid tutor once a week, twice a week, that's charging you $35, $50 an hour, that's gonna get really pricey really, really fast. This can be a big obstacle for a lot of people who either A, just don't have the money to pay for that, or B, feel really anxious about spending that kind of money, and that can prove to be a mental block, an emotional obstacle, and say, hey, I don't really want to practice my speaking right now because I can't afford it, because spending the money freaks me out, which is totally valid. And it's a big con with finding paid tutors. You do have to pay, and consistent practice with a paid tutor will add up. If you don't have that money, it can be tough. Another con with the paid tutor. So because you're paying a tutor, you can't just like go into, or you shouldn't, you could, I guess technically, you shouldn't just go into a class with a paid tutor with no expectations, with no intentions. I mean, I've done it before. Plenty of people do it. I would suggest not doing that. I would suggest, having expectations and having intentions. But if you have those expectations and you have intentions with your paid tutor, which you should, your expectations are higher, which means they're going to be harder to meet. So if you have a great conversation with a paid tutor, but it's not what you're looking for, and if you try to direct your paid tutor to teach you something that you're actually interested in learning about and helping you with things that you need help with, if your teacher isn't going to do it, then sure, it's great to be able to have a conversation with them in the target language. But if you're paying somebody, then you need to get what you're paying for. Your expectations are going to be much higher. It can be harder to find a tutor that's going to give you what you're looking for. Last con with paid tutors. Final con is, so you know how I said with the free language exchanges, the spontaneity of being able to pick up your phone and have a conversation with somebody on the fly can get rid of a lot of emotional obstacles, can get rid of a lot of real obstacles that we have with our schedules. With paid tutors, generally you have to set a schedule with them in advance. Now this is a little bit different with something like Baselang, where you can technically find a lesson within like 5 minutes, but it's probably not going to be with the tutor that you're looking for. Any tutors on like italki and Verbling and stuff like that, they have set schedules, which means it can be hard to find somebody who fits into your schedule well. It can be hard, and it can be an obstacle if you find somebody you really love and then forgot to look at their schedule to see when they're available, and you could be totally let down, and you'd gotten your hopes up and you're let down. It can be hard, it can be an obstacle. Finally, we are at the good parts of using a paid tutor to practice our language, and I've got 2 of them. Obviously there's a lot more, but this is just what I've got for this video because this is already a really long video. I've spent too much time bashing free language exchanges. Whoops. The first great thing about a paid tutor, a professional tutor can help you practice the concepts that you need practice with. They can help explain them to you and help you understand them, practice them, and correct you. It's a paid tutor, somebody who understands how to explain things well, how to teach things well. This is someone who has, materials to focus on these specific concepts. So if you need to work on past tense, for example, they have worksheets where they know where to find worksheets to help you with past tense. They have ideas to help you practice all sorts of things. If you get caught by something on the fly, they can help explain it to you. This is a lot easier than getting stuck on something and then Googling it and trying to go between different people saying different things, trying to find worksheets for yourself, trying to find one that you like. It's a lot easier to be able to go to a paid tutor and say, hey, I need help with this. Can you please help me with this? And your paid tutor can provide you assignments, worksheets, videos, verbal explanations, answer your questions. It's a lot more efficient and a lot more personalized to be able to approach a tutor and ask for help with these specific concepts. And finally, last but not least, my final good thing about using a private paid tutor for your language is set schedules. I know I said before that, technically having these set schedules with your tutors can be a con because it can, inspire a lot of anxiety and, stress us out. But if that's not something that you experience and you really thrive off the routine of being able to set, every Thursday at 9 a.m. you have a conversation with this particular teacher, this can really help us build consistency. This can really help us build confidence and get rid of a lot of the stress of, when am I going to see them next? And when I have to, finagle my schedule around, different language learners have different schedules, different emotional triggers, different reasons to get psyched out about language tutors. And I know I've mentioned a lot of different kinds of language students in this video, but this is so that, no matter what kind of language learner you are and what stresses you out and what your schedule is like. The difference between being able to have spontaneous conversations with free language exchanges and the consistency of a set schedule with a paid tutor, these can both be good things and they could both be bad things. It really depends on who you are, what you like, what your lifestyle is like, any number of things. So it's definitely something to be aware of and think about your life and how you relate, how you react to these kinds of different details. That is all I have for this video, and I say that as if that wasn't a ton of info. I know it's a ton of info. Whew, I'm like getting tired. That is all I have for this video. Let me know in the comments, what's your experience with free language exchanges, paid tutors, which one you prefer, why, Stuff like that I'm really interested to know. Everybody has different experiences, everybody likes different things, everybody dislikes different things, and what you like and dislike, it can really affect what kind of speaking practice works best for you. Remember, you can find me every other Monday at my blog at crashculture.com, every Wednesday and Sunday right here on YouTube, and in my Facebook group at crashculture.com/community. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.